We tend to think globalization is a modern invention. We think we were the first to build a world where an economy in one continent depends on a factory in another. We are wrong. 3,000 years ago, the world was already globalized. Kings in Egypt exchanged emails, on clay tablets, with emperors in Turkey. Princesses were married off like diplomatic currency to seal trade deals. And merchant ships carried cargo from 7 different civilizations on a single voyage. It was a golden age of diplomacy, trade, and wealth. And then, in a single lifetime, it all vanished. This is history. Today, we watch the first global economy burn. To understand what we lost, we have to look at a shipwreck found off the coast of Turkey. It's called the Uluburun ship. When divers explored it, they didn't just find goods from one nation. They found ivory from hippos in Africa, amber from the Baltic Sea in northern Europe, glass from Canaan, and copper from Cyprus. This ship wasn't just a merchant vessel. It was a microcosm of the Bronze Age world. This was a world where a Mycenaean Greek king could wear a necklace made of Afghan lapis lazuli while drinking wine from an Egyptian cup. The great powers of the time, the Egyptians, the Hittites, the Babylonians, the Mycenaeans, they weren't isolated. They were a club. They called each other brother. They wrote letters asking about each other's health, and more importantly, asking for gold. It was a system of balance, complex, efficient, and seemingly invincible. But complex systems have a fatal flaw. If you pull on one thread, the whole tapestry unravels. The collapse didn't start with an invasion. It started with the weather. Around 1250 BCE, the climate began to shift. Pollen samples from the bottom of ancient lakes tell us the story. A mega drought hit the eastern Mediterranean. This wasn't just a bad summer. It was a climate emergency that lasted for decades. In the Hittite Empire, the grain failed. The Hittite queen wrote a desperate letter to Egypt. She didn't ask for gold. She asked for food. She wrote, "I have no grain in my lands." The pharaoh Merneptah sent ships loaded with wheat to save his brother king. But the drought didn't stop. And when hunger starts, people move. Nomadic tribes, starving and desperate, began to migrate toward the cities. This put pressure on the supply chains. And here is where the complexity of the Bronze Age became a curse. To make bronze, you need 2 metals, copper and tin. Copper was easy to find, but tin? Tin was rare. It had to come from as far away as modern-day Afghanistan. Imagine if the oil stopped flowing today. That is what happened to tin. The trade routes grew dangerous. The caravans stopped coming. Without tin, armies couldn't repair their weapons. Without weapons, kings couldn't protect their grain. The system was straining. And then, looking out to sea, the watchmen saw the sails. Historians call them the Sea Peoples. It sounds like a myth, a villain from a fantasy novel, but they were terrifiedly real. Egyptian records describe them as a confederation of tribes with strange names: the Peleset, the Checker, the Shekelesh. For decades, historians thought they were a highly organized army of conquerors. But modern archaeology suggests something far more tragic. They weren't just warriors. They traveled with their wives, their children, and their household goods in ox carts. These weren't Vikings looking for plunder. They were refugees. They were the victims of the collapse in the north, pushing south to find food. But to the civilizations in their path, They were a plague. In 1177 BCE, they reached Egypt. Pharaoh Ramesses III met them at the Battle of the Delta. He described the encounter. They entered the mouths of the river like waterfowl, their hearts confident. It was a brutal ambush. Ramesses won the battle. He carved his victory onto the walls of his temple at Medinet Habu, ensuring history would remember his triumph. But it was a hollow victory. Egypt survived the invasion, but the cost bankrupted the state. And while Egypt held the line, the rest of the world was burning. The collapse wasn't instant. It took about 50 years. But when the dominoes fell, they fell hard. In the rich trading city of Ugarit, in modern Syria, we found a clay tablet. It was found in a kiln, as if the scribe was trying to bake it in a hurry before fleeing. It is the last letter Ugarit ever sent. The king of Ugarit wrote, "My father, behold, the enemy's ships came here. My cities were burned." He pleads, "Did you not know that all my troops are stationed in the Hittite country?" The letter ends with a chilling line. The country is abandoned to itself. Ugarit was destroyed. It was never rebuilt. Further north, the mighty Hittite capital of Hattusa was burned. But archaeologists noticed something strange. The public buildings were burned, but the houses were mostly empty. The people had already left. The city had died before the torch was even lit. In Greece, the great Mycenaean palaces, the homes of the heroes of the Trojan War, were destroyed one by one. Pylos, Tiryns, Mycenae, and yes, even Troy. Archaeology confirms that Troy was destroyed around 1180 BCE. Not by a wooden horse, perhaps, but by the same wave of violence that was consuming the world. By 1150 BCE, almost every major palace in the eastern Mediterranean was a smoking ruin. The global economy was dead. What followed was the Greek Dark Age. And we mean dark, literally. The light of knowledge went out. The Mycenaeans had a writing system called Linear B. They used it for administration, for taxes, for trade. After the collapse, Linear B vanished. For 400 years, no one in Greece wrote anything down. The Greeks forgot how to write. They forgot how to build with large stones. Later Greeks would look at the ruins of Mycenae and say they must have been built by giants, the Cyclops, because they couldn't imagine their own ancestors were capable of such engineering. Populations plummeted. In some regions, 75% of the people disappeared. Dead from famine, dead from war, or simply scattered to the hills to live as subsistence farmers. It took nearly 4 centuries for civilization to crawl back out of the mud. When writing finally returned to Greece around 800 BCE, it was to write down the oral legends of a lost golden age. Homer's Iliad isn't history, it's a memory. A ghost story about a world that was greater, richer, and more connected than the one they lived in. We look at the Bronze Age collapse and we see a mystery, but we should see a mirror. Their world fell because it was efficient. It was hyper-specialized. It was interconnected, just like ours. They faced climate change. They faced mass migration. They faced supply chain shocks. No single one of these problems killed them. It was the combination. A systems collapse. This story reminds us that civilization isn't a permanent state. It's a fragile agreement between us and the planet. But the Bronze Age wasn't the only time humanity hit the reset button. I'm here to help you know the empire's history forgot.